A monkey escaped its cage to save a baby from danger. What happened after was unthinkable. The zoo was packed that sunny Saturday, kids laughing and shouting, parents snapping pictures, and animals doing what animals do. But by the lion enclosure, something dangerous was about to happen, and only one small monkey noticed. Nico, a clever little capuchin, clung to the bars of his cage in the primate pavilion. His sharp eyes darted around, and his tiny hands gripped the metal tighter than usual. Something felt wrong. The world outside his cage was noisy and full of motion, but his focus locked onto one thing: a stroller parked too close to the railing near the lion habitat. Inside was a baby, smiling and waving her tiny plush giraffe. The stroller wobbled. Nico froze, his heart pounding. He tilted his head as the baby's mother turned away for just a second to help her older child. The stroller tipped again. No one noticed. Not the parents snapping selfies, not the kids staring at the monkeys. But Nico saw it all. Without a second thought, Nico climbed down from his perch. He knew the service hatch on his cage hadn't latched properly that morning. His quick little hands worked the opening loose. With a final pull, he was out. Free. The zoo was a blur of legs, voices, and strange smells as Nico dashed toward the lions. His little body zipped between strollers and people without anyone realizing what was happening. The stroller teetered again, one wheel hanging over the edge. Below, the lions stretched lazily, their golden eyes glinting as they flicked their tails. The baby laughed, completely unaware of the danger. Nico's instinct screamed, "Save her, now!" He leapt onto the stroller's handlebar just as it started to tip. His weight pulled it back, and the stroller landed safely on solid ground. The baby let out a surprised squeal, clutching her giraffe as Nico clung to the bar. A gasp rippled through the crowd. "Nico!" shouted Marcus, the head zookeeper. He pushed through the onlookers, his face pale as he spotted the little monkey outside his cage. "Get back here!" But Nico wasn't done. The baby was safe, but her giraffe had fallen into the lion enclosure. A loud cry came from the baby, her small hands reaching for the toy. The stuffed giraffe lay just beyond the safety fence, right near the resting lions. One of the big cats stretched lazily, its sharp eyes narrowing at the movement. Nico chirped softly as if telling the baby, "Don't cry, I'll fix it." Before anyone could stop him, he darted under the fence. "No!" Marcus yelled, sprinting toward the scene. The crowd erupted in chaos, screaming parents, crying kids, people fumbling for their phones to record. Nico grabbed the plush giraffe in one quick move. His small heart raced as the nearest lion stood up, its massive frame rippling with power. The lion's sharp gaze locked on Nico. Slowly, it began to stalk forward. "Nico, get out of there!" Marcus shouted again, lowering the emergency ladder into the enclosure. The crowd held its breath. Every move felt like it was happening in slow motion. The lion pounced. Nico sprang it upward, clutching the giraffe. He landed on the safety ladder, scrambling up just as the lion's paws swiped the air beneath him. The crowd cheered as the little monkey reached the top, squeezing through the bars to safety. Still holding the giraffe, Nico scampered back to the baby. Gently, he placed the toy into her lap. Her cries stopped instantly, turning into soft giggles as she hugged the plush giraffe close. The crowd erupted in applause. Marcus knelt down, catching his breath as Nico climbed onto his shoulder. "You're a hero, little guy," he said with a faint smile. But the moment didn't last. A sharp voice cut through the noise. "That monkey is dangerous." A man in a suit marched toward Marcus, flanked by security guards. "It escaped its cage, broke zoo protocol, and endangered the public." Marcus glared at him. "You've got to be kidding me, Paul. That monkey just saved a baby's life." Paul folded his arms. "Rules are rules. The board will hear about this. That monkey may have been a hero today, but it's still a liability." Marcus felt Nico's small hand tighten on his shirt. He glanced at the crowd, their smiles turning to murmurs of concern. He whispered under his breath, "Don't worry, buddy. I'm not letting them take you." But Marcus knew this wasn't over. In fact, it was just the beginning. And what came next would shock everyone. By the next morning, Sunhaven Zoo was in the headlines. "Monkey saves baby from lion habitat. Hero or hazard? Zoo panic as capuchin escapes to rescue toddler." The story was everywhere. Videos of Nico's daring leap and quick rescue were trending on social media with captions like, "Real-life hero monkey," and "Animal smarter than humans." Thousands of people commented, praising Nico's bravery, but not everyone was impressed. A heated debate erupted online. Some called for Nico to be celebrated, even demanding he get a medal. Others worried about safety, arguing that an animal smart enough to escape its cage could be unpredictable, or worse, dangerous. Among those critics was Paul Sanders, head of the zoo's board of directors. At the zoo, Marcus stood in front of Nico's enclosure, scrolling through his phone. He had barely slept, his mind replaying yesterday's chaos over and over. Nico sat on his favorite perch, calmly eating a banana as if nothing had happened. "You've got no idea how much trouble you've caused," Marcus muttered, glancing at Nico. But deep down, he couldn't be mad. The little monkey had done something extraordinary, something no human had noticed or acted on in time. Just then, Marcus's phone buzzed. It was a message from the board. "Emergency meeting at 3 p.m. Bring a full report on the incident." Marcus sighed, his stomach nodding. He knew what this meant. The board was going to decide Nico's fate, and Paul wouldn't miss a chance to argue for strict consequences. By the afternoon, the zoo's conference room was packed. Marcus sat at the far end of the long table, his report neatly printed and resting in front of him. Across from him sat Paul, his sharp suit immaculate, his face as serious as ever. "Let's get to the point," Paul began, tapping his pen on the table. "Yesterday, this monkey not only escaped its cage, but entered a predator's enclosure, putting itself and the public at risk. The zoo's reputation and safety policies are now under scrutiny. This kind of behavior cannot go unaddressed." Marcus clenched his fists under the table. "With all due respect, Paul, the monkey didn't put anyone at risk. It saved a baby's life. If it hadn't acted, that stroller could have fallen into the lion enclosure." Paul raised an eyebrow. "And if the lion had attacked the monkey, what kind of PR disaster would that have been? Not to mention the potential trauma to visitors." "Visitors were already traumatized," Marcus shot back, his voice rising. "They were traumatized by the stroller nearly tipping into the habitat. Nico stopped that from happening. He saw danger before any of us did, and he acted. You're focusing on the wrong thing." Paul leaned back in his chair, his expression cold. "The public may see this monkey as a hero now, but what happens when it escapes again? When it doesn't stop at helping? What if it lashes out? We have protocols for a reason." The room was silent for a moment. Other board members exchanged glances, clearly torn. Finally, one of them spoke up, her voice cautious. "What exactly are you proposing, Paul?" Paul adjusted his tie. "Transfer the monkey to a more secure facility, one better equipped to handle high-intelligence animals. Somewhere it can't escape." The words hit Marcus like a punch to the gut. "Transfer? You're talking about taking him away from the only home he's ever known, punishing him for saving a life? That's not fair." "This isn't about fairness, Marcus," Paul said. "It's about safety." Before Marcus could respond, another board member chimed in. "What about the public reaction? If we transfer Nico now, it'll look like we're punishing a hero. That could damage the zoo's reputation more than the escape itself." Paul's lips thinned. "Public opinion is fleeting. We have to think long-term." The debate went on for an hour, the tension in the room thick enough to cut with a knife. By the end, the board reached a compromise. Nico would stay at the zoo for now, but stricter measures would be put in place to ensure he couldn't escape again. Later that evening, Marcus returned to the primate pavilion. The zoo had closed for the day, and the grounds were quiet. Nico greeted him with a soft chirp, climbing down from his perch to sit by the bars. "They're watching you now," Marcus said, kneeling to meet the monkey's gaze. "They want to make sure you don't pull another stunt like that." Nico tilted his head as if he understood every word. Marcus chuckled softly, though there was no humor in it. "You're smarter than anyone gives you credit for. You know that? But you've got to stay out of trouble. If you don't, they'll send you away." As if in response, Nico reached through the bars and gently touched Marcus's hand. It was a small, quiet moment, but it spoke volumes. Marcus sighed, his chest tight. "You're special, little guy, but being special isn't always easy." Meanwhile, across town, a different meeting was happening. The baby's mother, Karen, sat in her living room, scrolling through videos of Nico's rescue. Her husband sat beside her, their baby fast asleep in her crib. "I can't believe they're even considering punishing that monkey," Karen said, her voice shaking with emotion. "He saved our daughter. How can they treat him like he's a threat?" Her husband frowned. "What can we do? It's not like we have any say in what happens at the zoo." Karen set her phone down, determination hardening her features. "Maybe not directly, but we're not the only ones who feel this way. Have you seen how many people are talking about this online? People love that monkey. If we speak up, maybe we can make a difference." She pulled out her laptop and began typing furiously. Within minutes, she had drafted a petition. "Save Nico, the hero monkey. Let him stay at Sun Haven Zoo." The next morning, Marcus arrived at the zoo to find a small crowd gathered near the entrance. At first, he thought it was just early visitors waiting to get in. But as he got closer, he realized they were holding signs. "Protect Nico. What? Hero monkey deserves better. Don't punish a good deed." His jaw dropped. "What the?" A young woman holding a clipboard stepped forward. "Hi, are you Marcus? I'm Karen. My baby is the one Nico saved." Marcus blinked in surprise. "Oh, hi, is this because of him?" Karen smiled. "Of course it is. Nico's a hero and people need to know that. We've already got over 10,000 signatures on our petition." Marcus couldn't help but grin. "Well, I'll be damned." As the crowd chanted and waved their signs, Nico watched from his enclosure, his bright eyes wide with curiosity. He didn't know what was happening, but he could sense the energy, the excitement, and somehow he knew this wasn't the end of the story, it was only the beginning. By mid-afternoon, the petition had exploded online. Karen's post, featuring the video of Nico's daring rescue and a heartfelt message about his bravery, went viral. News outlets picked it up, and hashtag Save Nico began trending on social media. People from all over the world weighed in, sharing their love for animals and their outrage at the idea of punishing a creature that had done something so extraordinary. Animals have instincts we can't even begin to understand. Nico saved that baby because he knew no one else would. This monkey is smarter than most people I know. Let him stay where he belongs. Moving him to a secure facility? More like punishing him for being a hero. Shame on the zoo board. Sunhaven Zoo's the social media page was flooded with comments, most of them calling for Nico to stay. A few people sided with the board, saying rules were rules, but they were quickly drowned out by the overwhelming support for the little monkey. Inside the zoo, Marcus was juggling a full schedule of meetings and phone calls. Paul Sanders, the head of the board, had called him twice that morning, demanding updates on the situation. "It's out of control, Marcus," Paul barked over the phone. "That petition has over 50,000 signatures now. People are acting like we're villains." "Maybe because you are," Marcus muttered under his breath, rubbing his temples. "What was that?" "Nothing," Marcus said quickly. "Look, I'll address the crowd and try to calm things down. But we can't ignore the fact that people are on Nico's side. If we try to move him now, it's going to backfire." Paul's sigh crackled through the phone. "Fine, do what you can. But remember, Marcus, the board makes the final decision." Marcus hung up and stared at Nico's enclosure. The little capuchin was playing with a shiny pebble, seemingly oblivious to the chaos he'd caused. "You have no idea the mess you've made, do you?" Marcus said softly. But then Nico looked up, and for a moment it felt like he did understand. Outside the zoo, the crowd of protesters had doubled. Karen had organized a small podium, and one by one people stepped up to speak about Nico. A retired firefighter took the microphone. "I know bravery when I see it. That monkey didn't think about himself. He saw someone in danger and acted. Isn't that what we teach about our kids? To help others, no matter the risk? We could all learn something from him." A little girl in pigtails followed. "Nico is my favorite animal. He's really smart, and I think he's a superhero. Please don't take him away." Karen stepped up last. She held up her phone, showing the viral video of Nico rescuing her baby. "This little monkey saved my daughter. He didn't think about rules or cages or what he was allowed to do. He just knew she needed help. How can we punish him for that? The crowd roared with applause. Signs waved and chants of "Save Nico" echoed across the parking lot. That evening, a local news station ran a live segment from the zoo. Karen and Marcus were interviewed side by side, their shared goal of protecting Nico putting them on the same team. Nico's actions show just how intelligent and compassionate animals can be, Marcus told the reporter. We have a responsibility to treat them with the same care and respect they show us. Karen added, my daughter wouldn't be here today if it weren't for Nico. Moving him to another facility is not just unnecessary, it's cruel. He belongs here in the home he knows, with the people who love him. The reporter turned to the camera. The fate of Nico the capuchin monkey is now the subject of intense debate. Will Sunhaven Zoo's board listen to the public, or will they stick to protocol? Stay tuned. Back at the zoo, Marcus stayed late, pacing his office. The day's events replayed in his mind. Paul's demands, the protesters, Karen's passionate speech. His desk phone rang, snapping him out of his thoughts. Marcus here. Marcus, it's Paul. His voice was strained. We need to talk. I figured you'd call, Marcus said, sitting down. What's the board decided? Paul hesitated. We're rethinking the transfer. Marcus blinked. Seriously? Look, the public backlash is worse than we expected. If we push this, it could hurt donations and attendance. Two things we can't afford. But, Paul added sharply, this doesn't mean we're giving Nico free rein. We'll allow him to stay on one condition. We enhance his enclosure to prevent any future escapes. That's it? Marcus asked, cautiously optimistic. That's it, Paul confirmed. But you'd better make sure he doesn't pull another stunt. One more incident, and he's gone. The next morning, Marcus made his way to Nico's enclosure with a sense of relief. You're staying, buddy, he said, crouching down near the bars. Nico chirped softly and reached out, his little hand brushing Marcus's. Let's keep you out of trouble from now on, okay? Marcus said with a chuckle. But deep down, he wondered if that was even possible. Nico had already shown he was no ordinary monkey. What would happen the next time he saw something that didn't sit right with him? As Marcus walked away, the little monkey climbed to the top of his enclosure, watching the zoo staff bustle below. His bright eyes scanned the crowd, always alert, always curious. He didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain. He wouldn't ignore danger if he saw it again. The crowd of supporters outside the zoo dwindled as news spread of the board's decision. Karen and her family left with smiles on their faces, grateful that Nico would remain at Sunhaven. But as the public celebrated the victory, no one could have predicted what was coming next. Nico's story wasn't over. It was only just beginning, and the unthinkable would soon take place. A month passed, and life at Sunhaven Zoo slowly returned to normal, or as normal as it could be with a local celebrity like Nico on the premises. His enclosure now featured reinforced locks, motion sensors, and an upgraded climbing structure to keep him entertained. Visitors flocked to see the hero monkey, and Nico became the star attraction. Families pointed at him in awe, kids waved excitedly, and zookeepers fielded endless questions about his intelligence. At first, Marcus was relieved that the chaos had settled, but deep down he worried. Nico wasn't like the other capuchins. He wasn't content with ropes and branches. He watched everything with sharp eyes, as though waiting for his next move. One sunny afternoon, the zoo was packed. The air buzzed with the sounds of chatter, laughter, and the occasional squawk or roar. Karen and her family returned for the first time since the incident. Her baby, Emma, now slightly older, pointed at the monkeys with wide eyes and giggles. There he is, Karen said, smiling as she spotted Nico perched on a branch. Our hero! Nico noticed them instantly. He tilted his head, then climbed down to the lower branches, his curious gaze fixed on Emma. The baby clapped her hands, and Nico chirped softly in response. Do you think he remembers us? Karen's husband asked. Oh, I'm sure he does, Karen replied. He's too smart not to. As they watched, a sudden commotion broke out near the reptile house. People shouted, and the crowd parted as a teenage boy sprinted through the zoo, clutching something in his hands. A zookeeper chased after him, yelling out, Stop! Put it back! Marcus, who had been observing from a distance, bolted toward the scene. What's going on? He asked the zookeeper, catching up. The zookeeper was out of breath. The kid, he grabbed one of the baby turtles from the exhibit. If he drops it, before she could finish, the boy tripped. His hands flew open, and the tiny turtle tumbled into the air. A collective gasp rippled through the onlookers. But before anyone could react, a small, swift shadow darted into action. Nico. He had been watching from his enclosure, and the moment the boy fell, he moved. In one graceful leap, he scaled the edge of his cage. The new locks held firm, but Nico was faster than the motion sensors. He slipped through the narrow gap where the cleaning staff accessed the habitat, a flaw no one had noticed until now. The crowd screamed as Nico launched himself into the air. His small hands reached out and caught the tiny turtle mid-fall. He landed smoothly on a nearby railing, clutching the baby turtle close to his chest. Marcus arrived just in time to see the scene unfold. His heart raced as he shouted, "Nico, stay there, buddy!" But Nico wasn't done. The baby turtle squirmed in his grip, clearly frightened. Nico chirped softly, stroking the turtle's shell as though to calm it. Then, with deliberate care, he climbed down and placed the turtle gently on the grass near the reptile house. The zookeeper rushed over, scooping up the baby turtle and inspecting it. "It's okay," she announced. "The turtle's fine." The crowd erupted into cheers and applause. Phones were out, cameras flashing, as Nico climbed back onto the railing. He seemed to pause, looking around at the humans below him, before turning back toward his enclosure. Marcus ran up to him, holding out his hands. "Come on, Nico. Let's get you home." Nico hesitated for a moment, then leapt into Marcus's arms. The zookeeper carried him back to the primate pavilion as the crowd chanted, "Hero monkey! Hero monkey!" By the time Marcus returned Nico to his enclosure, Paul was already waiting. His expression was a mix of anger and disbelief. "Are you kidding me, Marcus?" Paul snapped. "How many times is this going to happen?" "Paul, he saved the turtle. I don't care what he did," Paul interrupted. "He escaped his cage. Again. Do you know how bad this looks? What if he gets hurt next time? Or worse, hurts someone else?" Marcus sighed, running a hand through his hair. "He's not a threat, Paul. He's proving over and over that he's here to help." Paul shook his head. "You're too close to this, Marcus. The board already gave him one chance. This can't happen again." That evening, Marcus stayed late, reviewing footage of the incident. He replayed the moment Nico caught the turtle over and over, marveling at the monkey's precision. "You're not just smart," Marcus murmured to himself. "You're something else entirely." Outside, the zoo had quieted down. Most of the staff had gone home, but Karen lingered near the primate pavilion. She approached Marcus as he locked up for the night. "You know they're going to try to take him again, don't you?" she asked softly. Marcus nodded. "Yeah, Paul's not going to let this slide." Karen hesitated, then said, "What if there's another way? Something that proves he's not just another monkey?" Marcus frowned. "What do you mean?" "Look at what he's done," Karen said, her voice passionate. "He saved my daughter. He saved that turtle. He's clearly special. Maybe it's time the world saw him for what he is." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "And what's that?" "A hero," Karen said simply. The idea lingered in Marcus's mind as he locked up for the night. Was it possible to change how people saw Nico? Could they turn him into more than just an attraction at the zoo? He wasn't sure yet. But with Paul breathing down his neck and Nico's future on the line, Marcus knew he had to figure it out. And fast. Meanwhile, in his enclosure, Nico sat on his perch, watching the moonlight filter through the trees. He didn't understand the humans' arguments or their rules. All he knew was that when something was wrong, he couldn't sit by and do nothing. That wasn't who he was. And deep down, he felt it again. That same hum of instinct that had pushed him to act before. Something bigger was coming. Something he couldn't ignore. The buzz around Nico had reached new heights. His second act of heroism, saving the baby turtle, only fueled the public's fascination. News outlets covered the story nonstop, and the petition to keep Nico at Sunhaven Zoo passed 100,000 signatures. Social media was filled with posts of people calling Nico a hero, a genius, even a guardian angel. But behind the scenes, tension was growing. Paul Sanders and the zoo's board of directors weren't as thrilled as the public. Meetings grew heated, with Paul pushing harder for Nico's removal. The staff was torn. Some agreed with Marcus that Nico was special, while others worried he was too unpredictable. One chilly morning, the zoo opened as usual. Families filtered in, excited to see the famous capuchin monkey. Karen and her family were there again, this time carrying a sign that read, "Our hero Nico." Emma clapped her hands when she saw him, giggling as Nico chirped in response. Marcus watched from a distance, his stomach in knots. He had just come from another exhausting meeting with Paul, who had given him an ultimatum. One more incident, and he's gone. The day took a turn just before lunch. A large truck pulled into the zoo's back entrance, carrying supplies for a new exhibit. As workers unloaded crates, one slipped, spilling several pieces of equipment onto the ground. Among them was a small, highly venomous snake, coiled tightly and ready to strike. No one noticed it slither away into the main zoo area. Nico did. From his perch, he spotted the movement immediately. His keen eyes followed the snake as it weaved through the bushes and out toward the picnic area, where families sat eating lunch. His heart raced as he realized the danger. In the middle of the picnic area, a little boy, no older than 4, sat on the grass, happily munching on a sandwich. The snake slithered closer, its head raised, its tongue flicking the air. Nico acted. In one swift motion, Nico leapt from his enclosure. The reinforced locks held firm, but just as before, he exploited the cleaning staff's access point. He darted across the zoo, his small body weaving through the crowds unnoticed. By the time Marcus realized Nico was gone, it was too late. "Nico!" he shouted, sprinting toward the commotion. Visitors gasped and pointed as the little monkey raced into the picnic area. The snake was just inches away from the boy, who remained blissfully unaware. His mother, busy packing their lunch, hadn't noticed either. Nico launched himself from a nearby tree, landing between the boy and the snake. The crowd froze, unsure of what was happening. The snake hissed, its body coiling tightly, ready to strike. Nico bared his teeth and let out a loud, sharp chirp, a sound meant to intimidate. The snake hesitated for a split second, but then lunged. The monkey dodged expertly, grabbing a stick from the ground and swiping at the snake. It hissed again, retreating slightly. Nico chirped louder, waving the stick in a series of quick, jerky motions. Finally, the snake slithered away, disappearing into the bushes. The boy's mother turned just in time to see Nico standing protectively in front of her son. Her eyes widened as the reality of the situation sank in. "Oh my God," she whispered, pulling her son close. "That monkey saved him." The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Phones were out, recording every second of the dramatic rescue. Nico, breathing heavily, glanced at the boy, then scampered up a nearby tree to get a better view of the snake's retreat. Marcus arrived seconds later, his heart pounding. "Nico!" he called, relieved to see the little monkey unharmed. But his relief was short-lived as Paul stormed onto the scene, his face red with anger. "This is it, Marcus," Paul yelled. "I warned you. I told you. One more incident." "Paul, stop," said a woman's voice. It was the boy's mother. She stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. "He just saved my son's life." Paul hesitated, but before he could respond, Karen joined in. "That's 3 lives Nico has saved now. How many times does he have to prove himself before you see he's not just a monkey?" The crowd began to chant, "Hero, hero, hero." Paul's face paled as dozens of phones pointed in his direction. He knew this moment was being live-streamed. His protest would look heartless. Finally, he threw his hands up in frustration. "Fine, but if anything else happens—" "Nothing else will happen," Marcus said firmly, stepping forward. "We'll make sure of it." By that evening, the story had gone global. News anchors called Nico a true hero and a symbol of the bond between humans and animals. Animal behaviorists weighed in, marveling at his instincts and intelligence. Sunhaven Zoo saw a surge in visitors, all eager to see the little monkey who had done the unthinkable. A week later, the zoo held a special event to honor Nico. Marcus stood on stage, holding a microphone as a large crowd gathered. Behind him, Nico sat on a perch, his bright eyes scanning the audience. "Today, we celebrate Nico," Marcus began, his voice steady. "He's shown us what it means to care for others, to act selflessly, and to protect those who can't protect themselves. Nico isn't just a hero, he's family. The crowd cheered as Marcus unveiled a plaque near Nico's enclosure. It read, "Nico, the hero monkey, a guardian of Sunhaven Zoo. May his courage inspire us all." Karen, her family, and the boy's mother stood near the front, clapping and smiling. Nico chirped, hopping down to the lower branches of his enclosure as if acknowledging the applause. As the crowd dispersed, Marcus stayed behind, leaning against the enclosure. "You did good, buddy," he said softly. Nico climbed down, reaching out to touch Marcus's hand through the bars. The little monkey had changed everything, not just for the zoo, but for everyone who had witnessed his bravery. Nico wasn't just an animal in a cage. He was a symbol of what it meant to care, to act, and to protect. And deep down, Marcus knew, if danger ever struck again, Nico wouldn't hesitate to step up. Because that's who he was, the hero monkey.